Hello and welcome to episode 9 of my Battle Games in Middle-earth terrain tutorial building with me. I'm having really good fun doing these. The last one was really good. I had a great time going back to the signal fire and creating 2 awesome builds that go very well when compared to my original one. I've obviously learned a little bit. The original one's still pretty cool, but I think the 2 new ones are much better. Let's turn our attention, however, to magazine number 10, apologies, number 10, which is my episode number 9. I always get confused. And this is one I have also been looking forward to for quite some time. This is building a Rohan house. Now, there's an awesome tutorial, which I'll be going through, clearly. However, I'm sure you're aware that Games Workshop produced some Rohan houses quite recently in a plastic kit form. And over there behind the camera, up on that shelf, still in its shrink wrap, I can see the Rohan stronghold, and I am going to be opening that and building that as part of this video. So that's going to be my advanced build. So without any further ado, let's point the camera down at the bench over there and have a look at what their instructions are. And when I'm ready, I will also start on the Rohan stronghold. You can tell which one I'm more excited about. So here we have it, the modelling workshop for a Rohan building. In this PAX battle game, Saruman's Uruk-hai attack the farms and homesteads of the Rohan with ruthless efficiency. Well, that's what they do, isn't it? These pages will show you how to create a Rohan building for use on the tabletop. So there we are, that sounds really good. The items you'll need is a small cardboard box, thick packing card, thin cardboard, ready mix filler, balsa wood, black, white, brown and yellow acrylic paints, a large paintbrush, a cutting knife, craft knife, steel rule and cutting mat, scissors, modelling sand, static grass, PVA wood glue and super glue. So it's a pretty standard list of what you will need, and you can see over on this side these are the instructions which we're going to get stuck into in a second. But first of all, let's read this little bit of text here. This pack looks at how you can make a basic building for use in your battle games. We'll be showing you straightforward techniques that will allow you to create a Rohan homestead. But with a little experimentation, you could create buildings from anywhere in Middle-earth. The most distinctive features of a Rohan building are its thatched roof and wooden beams. To create the thatch, you will need some plaster filler, the same material we used in Pack 6 modelling workshop. The beams are made from balsa, the same softwood that we made fences from in Pack 7. Now, as you know by now, having watched many of my videos, I'm sure I don't use balsa wood. So we'll be using something else for that, but that's fine. So I'm going to gather together the materials that I need and get stuck into step 1. So step 1, basic box shape. This is the easiest part, no kidding. Find a cardboard box that is roughly house size when compared to a miniature. As you'll be taking all your measurements from this box, it could be any size you like, from a small hut to an impressive long haul. To start with, we recommend a relatively small building. Once you have your box, mark the bottom, top and front with a felt tip pen. This will come in useful later. So, obviously, I'm making 2 because, well, when do I ever do anything that's simple? So I've got a long narrow one, a long thin one here, and I've got a shorter taller one there. And that's what I'm going to do. And what I'll do is I will mark, as it suggests, top, and this will be a front, and that will be a front, though kind of what is the difference between the front and the side, but anyway, that's a front, that's a side, and on this one as well, side, front, side. So this is going to be quite a departure for me. I've been thinking about this a bit. These are not going to be playable. You can't go inside them. And I very, very rarely make buildings that you can't get access to and they don't have floors and interiors. So I'm probably going to quite enjoy this being a little bit freer. So that's done. Step 2. That was easy, wasn't it? Step 2. Preparing the roof. Place the bottom of the box down on thick corrugated packing card. Place it so that the length of the box runs in line with the corrugation and not across it. Now I have some thick packing card here, however it's probably not going to be suitable for my long one. So we will do the short fat one and hope, actually that's probably not going to be the right size. I'm going to go away, grab some packing card that'll be the correct size and I'll be back very shortly. There we are, that's more like it. So preparing the roof this is. Place the bottom of the box down on thick corrugated padded card. Place it so that the corrugations run in line with the corrugation, not across it. Then draw around your box. Next, slide the box along so that it is side by side with the square. and draw it again. You should now have an oblong shape with a line in the middle, but it needs to be a little bit bigger. Put your ruler along the top of the oblong so that it forms the top of a T with the line in the middle. Draw along the ruler and then extend the ends of the oblong to meet this new line. Cut out this new oblong shape. This will become the roof of the house. So that sounds simple enough. So what I'm going to do is on this 90-degree corner down here, I'm going to draw, which is just off shot, apologies, I'm going to draw around that. There we are, with a line down the middle. And then I'm going to draw along around it again as it suggests, like so. Could do this with measurements, might even be easier. Considering how klutzy I'm being at this. But there we are. That's that. And then I'm going to take my ruler, as it suggests, and I'm going to draw along the top. I'm going to draw down the sides. So there we are. So that's the shape that I want to cut out. So let's get a knife and cut that out. My ever-to-hand Stanley knife and my ever-to-hand safety rule. There we are. So what we'll do now is we will do the same for the long thin building, which should fit here. Yes, it will. Look at that. Can use the same cut. So I'll get the pen and draw around it. There we are, steps 1 and 2 done. I'll pack up here, tidy up, and I'll be back again with step 3 in a second. We are already on to step 3, the house ends. To make the distinctive sloping roof look convincing, follow this step closely. Place the front end of your box, or back end, they're the same size, onto your thick packing card and draw around it, creating a square shape. Slide the box along the card until the bottom edge of the box is flush with the top edge of the square. Then draw around the box again. You should now have 2 squares end on end. In the second square, draw lines with the ruler from each corner to the opposing corner. Now, cut out the end of house shape marked in orange on the pick, leaving 1 triangle joined to the square. Keep the other triangle we have marked in orange and put it to one side as it will come in useful later. Using your square with the triangle on top as a template, draw around it and cut out a second identical wall end. Finally, glue both wall ends onto your box at the front and back end so that the triangle is sticking up at the top. That's pretty obvious and a lot of reading. I hope that wasn't too boring. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw around this box and then we're going to draw around it again. There we are. And then we're going to follow those instructions. Those instructions are to do this. So you draw diagonally across, and you draw diagonally across, corner to corner and corner to corner, okay? This is the bit that you keep and put to one side, and you cut this whole area out. So, probably the best way to do this is to cut the square out and then do those lines. So that's probably the best way to do it. So that's what I'm going to do. With that cut out, what we'll now do is cut down these corners from corner to corner. So the next step, it says, is to draw around this. Now that's going to be nice and easy because I've got this section here which just does happen to be pretty much the right size. So we'll just draw around that and we'll cut that out. And I will do the other one for this other bigger, or the taller but less long building I'll do that off camera because it's going to be exactly the same process. What you'll notice is I'm cutting down the inside of my lines because I'm using a very fat marker to draw them, which is probably silly. So there we are, that's that. So what we then do is we then stick those to the ends of this building, which could be interesting because it's a little bit flimsy, but that's fine. So that's up, that's side, there we are, that's front, that's top. They weren't wrong, were they? There we are, that can glue there, and that can glue there very nicely. Right, let's get some PVA and let's get that stuck on. What I will do now is I will move that to another table, and I might get big clamps which I have over there, or I might put some weights on it, but either way I'm going to leave that to dry now, and I will do the ends for this building, and I'll be back with the next step shortly. Now we've reached step 4. Step 4 is the stone foundations, and once again I'll do the slightly smaller building, but I won't do the larger one on camera because, yeah, they'll be the same. They're just going to be repetitive. So we'll just stick to the smaller building on camera for now. So with your scissors, cut 4 strips out of your packing card. Make them all longer than the longest edge of your box, and wide enough, or deep enough that means, to look like stout foundations. Take 1 strip and glue it to your box. Place it so that it is flush with the bottom on one side. The end of the card strip should stick out past the other end. Now glue the next strip so that it butts against the first while still remaining flush along the bottom. Repeat this with the remaining 2 strips. When the glue is dry, trim away the excess card with some scissors and cover the edges with masking tape. So that makes a lot of sense. So what we're going to do now is we're going to measure longer than the longest length. Okay, so I've got my card, which is what I've been using all along, which is doing all right at the moment. And we'll rotate that. Just clear a few bits and pieces out of the way. There we are, that's perfect. And so what we're going to do is we're going to measure some lengths. Get my pencil. Longer than the longest length will be roughly around there. So what I'm going to do is get my straight edge and get a 90-degree one as well here, and we will work out some lines. There we are, so we have our 4 lengths. So what we're now going to do is get the PVA and stick them along like that. So a little bit of PVA and then a bit of weight, and this will probably take a little bit of time, so I'll probably not do all this on camera because I think I'm going to need to do some weights to make sure it's all held down right, but it should just be as simple as that. So you do that bit, make sure it's flush, and then put glue on this so we're not putting it where we don't need it, and a little bit on the end just because that will then make that a secure join. There we are. Make sure that's all flush, and then along here like so, and a little bit on the end like that. Actually, that has actually been alright to do on camera live. I have got an issue with this cardboard box I've chosen, with it being a bit gapey, which is a bit annoying. That's going to be fun. I'm going to have to tape that, I think. I probably should have taped that with some masking tape before I started doing all this, and I may yet regret the fact that I haven't. But we shall see. So So make sure that's flush. Doing this all at the same time does make it a little bit more tricky to not knock them. There we are. So then you can push it like that, and that there is all good. Right, I am going to go and clamp that a bit, I think, and then leave that to dry, and I'll be back with the next stage. I'll also do the longer building. I'll be back with the next stage very shortly. Now, for the moment that I've been waiting for, and I'm not going to attempt to do a spin like Lockie did. That was crazy. Here we have the Rohan stronghold, which I managed to get before it sold out. I'm very, very pleased about, and it's been sat up there that long that it's got dust on it. But now, as part of this build, I'm going to get to open this live on camera, as it were, even though you're not actually there. So we will very, very carefully open this with this horrible single-use plastic that I hate so much. Straight in the bin. What a waste. Okay, so the excitement builds and builds. There we are. Wow, now that is a veritable pile of plastic. So what have we got? We have some instructions on the houses, and we have some instructions on the watchtower and the palisades. Wow, I mean, people have told me how good these are. And this actually is, honestly, well, you've seen it's in plastic, and I don't have any other packs. This is the first time I've seen it. That is stunning. Absolutely stunning. So I think each sprue is the same, and you can make all sorts of different models and different extensions from them, but I'm just going to do one. I'm going to do the small simple one for now. That's what I'm going to do on this video. So I'm going to stop being excited and muttering away to myself, because I'm sure that's not the greatest of experiences to watch. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out one of the sprues, and I'm going to wash it, because I always wash things before I do them, and then we're going to start putting it together. Now this is plastic, so I can use my plastic glue, which I have over there, so that's going to be nice. I've got proper plastic cement, which sticks this stuff much nicer, the Tamiya extra thin. And we're going to just make the very small, basic, simple one, which will still look really nice. So that's what we're going to end up with, hopefully. I'll be back once I've washed and once it's dried, and when I'm ready to start cutting sprues and gluing together. So here we are, very excited beard clipper. I'm not going to do a complete build of this on camera, because there are so many other excellent videos out there showing how to make use of this kit, and that would just be replicative, or whatever the word is, duplicative. Best of which I would definitely recommend go and check out Zorb's. Lockie's is absolutely stunning, and some of the things that he creates out of this kit just blow my mind. So I'm not going to go into this in huge depth. Sorry if you were hoping I would. Just think that it will be pointless. Go and check out Lockie's video. But I thought I would do some in progresses and some very excited getting started, and then I'm just going to crack on and make this kit. What I have is the Tamiya extra thin, which is plastic cement, so I'm going to be using that to glue it together, because this is a plastic kit. I have washed this in soapy water and then dried it, and my father will be turning in his grave, literally. I have the instructions. Here's an engineer. He would be disgusted at me reading the instructions, but hey, I need to work out how I'm going to do this. So what I'm going to do, as I said, I'm not going to do this all on camera. I'm going to get this basically assembled, and then I will bring you along at the points at which I think that it's going to be interesting for you to see something. So, did I mention I'm excited? So the next step is steps and bricks. To make the steps, first cut out strips of packing card and stick them one on top of another, making a rough shape. Next, use masking tape to cover all the gaps. Glue this to the front where you want your door to be. At this point, you can add card bricks to your foundations if you like, similar to what those used on the wall in Pack 7. Before moving to the next step, it's a good idea to add texture. In exactly the same way as described in Step 7, make use of filler. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do two different types. So this is going to be, the door on this one is going to be on the short end, but this one being slightly more dramatic, I'm actually going to have coming out from here. But as per usual, I'll only show you doing the one because it is very, very simple. I'm actually making use of some offcuts as well because I'm cheap, and even though it's packing card, particularly at this time in this environment when there's not very much of anything going around, I don't want to waste it. So I'm going to do that. And this is very, very simple. Very simple to make the steps. Make sure that you've got them to go to the height you want, and then simply glue them together like so. And they'll be dry in an hour or so, and I'll be able to put the masking tape on them and that'll be good. So I'll pop that there. So that will fit for that one. Now for this one, as I've said, I want to do it slightly more dramatic. So what I'm going to do is I have this card here which will be good to do the top step, but I'm going to need to get some other card because I want to do quite a grand entrance because this is going to be quite a grand hall. So what I'll do is I'll get that done and I'll invite you back when I'm about to glue it together. I changed my mind. I thought I'd show you how I'm doing this. So what I've done is I've found a bit of cardboard and I've worked out the width I want, which is about that wide, about 10 centimetres. And I've decided I want the top step to be 5 centimetres. So I've cut 5 centimetres, and now what I'm going to do is offer that up and do each step coming out 3 centimetres. So I've got the marks on my cutting mat, which helps out in this immeasurably. And also the fact that while this is a grand building, a little bit of unevenness isn't actually all that unrealistic. So that's that. And I know that I need 4 lengths, so I should have enough. So that one can now be cut as well. And that's how I'm doing it. So that goes to 18, which means that goes to 15. And this is going to be a really nice grand entrance for this building. The steps are stuck on, as you can see, and the next step I'm going to do, which I probably could have done yesterday but didn't get time, so I'm quite busy, is I'm going to be sticking the bricks, which I have from previous builds, as we've seen. And I've decided to make the steps to this bigger building have some slabs on it. So what I've got there are some cardboard that I've cut out and I've offered up, and I've got a few spares for the edges. Now this is probably going to take some time, and I'm going to just do a little bit now and a little bit through the day, and just get this done as quick as I can with my available time today. So I will be back later to show you what this looks like with the bricks stuck on and with the tiles on here, on the slabs on, and also I'll be painting on the plaster, the same as I did in my previous video. So if you haven't seen that, go back and watch that, the one about the signal fires. You can see me using this technique with a polyfiller and a wet brush and brushing it over the whole of the structure. So I'll be back when that's done to show you what that looks like and move on to the next step. I've made some progress on the Games Workshop Rohan House. However, I had a bit of an issue with it, so I've had to re-glue and stick it. I'm finding this kit to be good, but not quite as impressed as I'd hoped to be, but maybe I went into it with too high hopes. However, it is going on. I got a lot of this done last night, and I should have it ready for priming and painting, hopefully later on today or tomorrow, depending on how much time I get. So I just thought I'd show you. I have struggled a bit. It did go together quite well. One of the biggest challenges I had was keeping these walls straight, and now I've just put the roof on top, and it wasn't all that snug a fit. I was expecting it to fit better. So those are the questions I've got. It could be my fault. I could have just done it badly, but I'm going to let that to go off and come back to that later on as well. As you can see, this has had the texture put onto it and also has had bricks put on. Now the next step is about wooden supports, and what it says is that you should have wooden supports on each of the corners. Now, honestly, I didn't notice that because I didn't read ahead because I'm an idiot. However, I probably wouldn't have done it anyway because I want this one not to have wooden supports. I want this to be a brick-built, very solid building. So that's not far off. This, you can see, has not got the texture yet on the base around the edge because I've only just glued these. And this steps are on nice. However, what I'm going to do on this, and I really just don't like making things easy for myself, is I'm going to stick coffee stirrers all the way around it. And that's going to take me ages. And I don't even know if I'm going to get it done for the video, but I'm going to crack on because, and this is really important to me, I'm not just doing this to like rush. That is the vision I have for this building, and therefore that's what I'm going to do. Now, the other thing to say is I need to pull out the correct drawer over here. Yes, here it is. So I have some old MDF windows that never got used on a previous kit, and I'm going to make use of those on this. So I'm going to stick some of those on. And the other thing is that as I'm working on this, the actual building, the Rohan House from Games Workshop, it has a lovely door that I'm not going to make use of because of how I'm making my Rohan building, and so I'm going to clip that out, and that is going to be the door that will go on there, and that will look absolutely lovely. So that's what I'm about to get stuck into. I'll be back. Probably this will now. I don't know if I'll finish it for the video. I'll keep talking about it and showing my progress, but I'm not going to panic completely. I'm going to focus on this one. So I'll be back again with this one, with the next step of the official build, and also show you how I'm getting on with the Rohan House from Games Workshop as well. And this one, it will finish or it won't, frankly. As you can see, the texturing is all on and dried on this building now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip step 6. I think I've already said that. I've decided on this one I'm not going to be having wooden supports because, well, I just didn't want it and I didn't read ahead, and that was my mistake. But still, I think it will look good. But if you want to, you can put wooden supports on either end around the corners. There, and there, and that will then give you some support for the end of the building. However, I'm doing that slightly differently, as I've said. So we're going to skip on to step 7. This is a long one, this. Step 7 is doors and windows. To make the door, cut a rough door shape out of balsa wood. Make it big enough so that it looks like a model could fit through. With a pen, press hard and draw lines down the front of the door. This gives the impression of wooden timbers. Next, glue the door above the steps. Make the window shutters in exactly the same way, but cut them small enough to look like windows. Glue these in the middle of the side walls. If you wish, you could also glue on small strips of thin card to represent hinges. So, despite my absolute hatred for balsa wood, I do own some, I did buy some, I just didn't like what happened with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and use it again. And this could be quite funny because I really, as I say, really don't like it. So what we'll do is we will roughly mark out a shape of a door, and we will get ourselves a miniature. Here we are. One of my battle companies is just sat here. So there we are. That's George Michael. No, Boy George. Sorry, Boy George. And I will do it so that it is high enough for him. So we'll go to about that height. And we'll do it so it's wide enough. You know what? Let's do it so I have to cut less. That would be sensible, wouldn't it? And we're going to do it in a kind of semicircular way, like so, and like so, and then I'll get the ruler and we'll draw down there, and that will have to do. Like I say, I'm not really a big fan of balsa, so this could go very badly wrong. Let's just see if that's big enough. Yeah, that's big enough. So let's cut this thing out. There we are. That was easier than I expected it to be. I think my reluctance to use balsa wood comes from the fact that I just don't use it, and I'm not used to it, you see. So now I'm going to grab my reinforced pen, wherever that is. Found it. I have my reinforced pen, which I use for marking in wood on foam. And we will... Oh, it still works. I didn't even know I had ink in it. We will draw on the wooden panels. There we are. And actually I'm going to make that so that it looks a little bit more natural. So I'm going to put some cross pieces on, like so. There we are, we have a door. And that will get stuck here. Doesn't that look good? Right, so a little bit of PVA and stick that in. And then we'll do the shutters. And then that'll be this step done, which is exciting. The next part of step 7 involves using balsa wood to, see, this is why I don't like balsa wood, it just split. It's so delicate, you've got to be super gentle with it. And my big klutzy hands aren't good. Right, so hopefully that will stick. Yeah, the next bit it says to put balsa wood here, but unfortunately the size of balsa wood sheets that I have, and no way of getting more obviously, are too small. So I'm going to have to think about that a little bit, so I'll come back to that next. I'm going to put a bit more glue on that. I really did just put the slightest smear, and it obviously needs a little bit more to hold it in place. Right, so I'm going to do that very, very gently. Still breaking it. Stick that there. There we are. Good. So to do that, I'll mark a 2 centimetre strip, cut that out, and then split it up into 2 centimetre sections. And then we'll stick those on there. And I will do the card hinges after these are stuck in place. I think I'm going to find that a little bit easier to do. And also I'm running a little bit out of time in this time slot I've got to do this hobbying, so I need to finish up and get on with the rest of the day. How do you do your hobbying? Do you do it in long, so you've got loads of time and spend hours at it? Or are you a little bit more like me, in that you get 5 minutes here and 10 minutes there and you just do as much as you can in those slots? Be interesting to hear that actually. There we are. And that I will now leave to dry. I'll be back later with the next step. The door and windows are now dried in. And I've had an idea, which I hadn't had before, and I'm gutted because this would have been good to have been drying at the same time, but never mind. As I said in the previous clip, my these sections of balsa are just not big enough. They're too narrow to do the whole of that end. However, what they're not too narrow to do and not too small to do is to cut them in half, so to get half of a triangle out of each one. So half of a triangle and half of a triangle, stick them on, and then I can score them down, and then I can do what's supposed to be done. So the way to do this, and what I'm going to do, how I'm going to manage this, is quite simply by laying that there and laying that there. What I can do is I can mark out where I need to cut to get half of the roof end, like so. So let's just do that, make sure I do it right there. So we'll cut that there. Okay. And then I can go the other side. And I can do that. Like so. So I'll end up with an odd shape, but I'll keep that, and I'm sure I can make use of it some other way. Actually, it was that side that I need to cut. I need to make sure that I don't do this wrong. There we are. So what I'll do is I will take those two. I will then get my knife and my safety ruler, as always. And we'll cut that. There we are. And we'll cut that. Odd shaped bit to one side. I'm sure I'll find a use for it somewhere. And then they can be glued on there. And I can even make a little bit of a feature of it maybe by having the line down the middle or something, but I'm not sure. But that's going to work fine. So I'm going to get on with that now. Hopefully you can see that. Let me bring the light down and round a bit so you can see a bit better. So yeah, that's going to work quite nicely. So I'm going to get that glued in place and clamped. I won't do that on camera because it's a bit fiddly, and also the battery's running out, I see. And I'll do that on the other side as well, and I'll be back later for the next step. I just thought I'd show quickly that I am making progress on the other building, the longer one, which I'm cladding with the coffee stirrers. You can see that I've started to stick these down. Some of them aren't stuck quite so well, but this is a process that will take me a while. As I said, I'm not sure I'll get it done for the original video, but I will put out a follow-up once this is completed so you all can see what it looks like. But I thought I'd quickly show that the build is ongoing there as well. That has not stopped. Over on the official build, which has the balsa ends now stuck on nicely, we're about to work on the roof frame, which is step 8. So let me talk you through that. Now it's time to start building the roof. Take your oblong from step 2, here it is, and score along the middle line with the craft knife. Scoring means gently cutting across something without cutting through it. You should now find the oblong folds with ease. Glue this folded oblong into place as shown and hold it there until it sticks. Next, cut 4 long strips out of balsa wood and making each about 1 centimetre or ½ inch in width. These will be the beams on the end of the roof. Glue them in place and trim away any overhanging wood so that they are a reasonable length. So what we will do is we will get a knife and we will get a safety ruler, and we will score down this central line as it suggests, like there. So we'll score down that line, and that will mean that this can then bend. And this does work because I do this all the time on other projects. And it's very simple, just like that. You really don't need to score it very hard to get it to do what it wants to do. There we are. Maybe a bit harder than that. I didn't do it very much at this end. I did it better further down. There we are. You need to just cut that top layer. There it is. There it is. Right. And that now will fit over there. So what I'm going to do is glue that in place. It suggests using masking tape, to put in masking tape all the way around, which doesn't sound like a bad idea, so we'll give that a go. So let's get this started on. Let's get my PVA and my brush and my, which was all the way over here. There we are. I was just working on the cladding for the other building. So what we'll do is we will put some PVA down these ends of the gable ends. There. It could be good to use hot glue for this because that will probably dry a lot quicker. So if I have trouble with this, you may find that I come back and do it with hot glue. I'm not normally a fan of hot glue. I don't think that it actually holds for a long time, if you know what I mean. I think it degrades over time, and therefore if you want your material, you want your building to last, it's not necessarily the best glue, or at least that's my feeling on it. I don't actually have very much empirical evidence on that, apart from the fact that a couple of times it has seemed to rather quickly lose its hold, which isn't really ideal. And PVA, yeah, it's our friend, isn't it, as a hobbyist. There we are. So I'll put that on there. And what I'm actually going to do, even though it's probably not going to do very much, I am going to run a bead along the edges of the building as well, because anything that can help hold this in place is going to be a good thing. There we are. So we've got that. So now we're going to take my very badly done roof and we're going to stick that on there and try and make it so that it's central. Yep. And I don't have my masking tape to hand, so give me 1 minute. Right, I'm back and I have masking tape. Now One option, actually, having just looked at this, you could do is you can make it so that it glues one side down, so put weight on that, and then glue the other side down afterwards. But I'm impatient and also don't have huge amounts of time, so I'm going to use their suggestion of masking tape to hold this in place. This is a new technique for me, which I have never done before, and isn't going to work when the masking tape breaks like that. Does that ever happen to you? That's very annoying. Right, let's try that again, shall we? So, stick that there. Let's get that one out of the way. This masking tape is not very good. Maybe it's quite old. Maybe that's what it is. Apart from my failure to use masking tape, that's actually worked quite nicely. I'm going to put some more around to hold it down a bit tighter here if I can manage to do it without failing in my application of masking tape again. Right, so I will now leave that to dry and come back later on to do the end frame. That was a whole lot more hassle than I expected it to be. That's dried on nicely, as you can see. So now we're going to do the next step, which is the roof frame. Now, what it talks about here is using balsa, as you can see I've got some, to stick down along the edges here and here. And clearly my building's quite large and I can't do the full height. However, it does say that you're going to put a device and that will should cover that gap, hopefully. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my knife. I have my craft knife, not my Stanley knife to hand this morning. And it says to do it about 1/2 inch or 1 centimetre deep. Now I'm not totally sure if that's going to be deep enough for how I've done my building. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to cut 2 centimetres and have a look at it and then make a decision as to whether I cut this piece in half or trim it down or whatever. It just means I can go from knowledge rather than guesswork. So yeah, that's probably going to be a bit much. Yeah, let's cut that in half. So 1 centimetre each and see what that looks like. There we are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick 1 centimetre sections there and there and there and there, and that then will look really good, and I'll let that dry and I'll be back for the design, or what it's called in the design, or the motif would be another good word for it, that is going to be at the end of each roof. So right here. I'll be back in a short while. I have finally finished assembling these to a level that I'm happy with at the moment. Obviously I've not done the fenced area yet, but I'll do that when I put it on a base. I've found this to be quite frustrating. It certainly isn't as good a build as I was expecting, but it is what it is. So what I've got to do now is I've got to do a bit of filling around here and here, and then I'm going to take it and I'm going to prime it with a bit of light brown. That's what I'm going to pick, I think, to prime this with. So I'm going to get those two processes done. Just to show you what I'm going to use for the fillering, I'm actually going to use this Mr. Hobby Mr. Dissolved Putty. If I can get that to focus, there we are, Mr. Dissolved Putty. That is something that was recommended to me by Brushstroke, good friend, and it is brilliant. So I would recommend that quite highly if you're doing any fillering on any plastic kits or whatever. It's certainly easier to use than green stuff if you haven't got to fill or do any sculpting. Green stuff obviously is a lot better if you've got to sculpt things in, but I won't have to for this, so I'm going to just paint that on. If I can, I'll maybe do a short of me using it as well, so maybe I'll set the camera up now and invite you along to watch that. So let me show you how I use this Mr. Dissolved Putty as a filler. So what we've got here is the roof of the Rohan House, and I had a lot of trouble sticking this extension roof onto the sloping roof. It just didn't want to go, and in the end I just used oodles of super glue and kind of balanced it up. Now this might even be slightly too big of a gap to easily fill with this stuff. However, hopefully you can see well enough, particularly if I turn that there and go down this seam here, which is slightly smaller. This is as easy as it is to put on. Now I'm making a bit of a mess here, but it's okay, because what it does is it actually seems to sink into the gaps, like so. So I'm able to take that, and I'm taking it from the lid so I don't risk knocking the actual bottle over. And you can see that I can fill in the top and the seams, and it's a lot easier. It's much better than liquid green stuff as well. There we are, just with an old paintbrush, and it does wash off with water, so you're not going to completely ruin your paintbrush. You're going to get some use out of it, but it's pretty cool. It's pretty good stuff. I like it a lot. I use this now much more than green stuff. Green stuff is more, I use it for sculpting. So yeah, that's how I make use of it. I would highly recommend it. And the other thing I'd recommend is, if you don't yet follow Brushstroke, why not go and follow him? I've got a link to his channel on the sidebar of my channel. He does excellent painting tutorials and basing tutorials, and he is also a top lad and absolutely worth following. So go and sort it out if you don't follow him yet, and if you do, well done. Well done for following him. Right, I'm going to carry on, do the rest of this now, and I'll be back, like I say, once I've finished priming and I'm ready to paint. The next step is actually still part of step 8, which is finally cut out a device to glue to the top of the roof, which means to glue just in here. Each device is unique to the family who lives in the house, so it can be whatever you like, from simple shapes like squares and triangles to more elaborate designs like horse headers or snakes. Now, I'm going to do something quite simple. I'll do something more advanced on my other build, which is actually coming on quite well, and there's even a chance it might make this video, so we'll see. I'm still cladding it with coffee stirrers. So what I've done is I have drawn a design. I don't know how well that's going to come out. It doesn't seem to be coming out very well on the monitor I'm looking at, but never mind, there's a design here, a C. I've decided to basically go with the same rough shape that they came up with. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that out now using a craft knife, and then what I'll do is I'll draw round this one to do my second one, so I get them looking roughly the same. So let's see how easy this is to cut out. I'm going to say that this is the time when the craft knife is not the correct tool. It's just too fiddly to try and cut in a circle with a craft knife. Now you might better use the craft knife, as I'm doing here, to do the large parts, which it might be useful for, so let's keep doing that. But then I'm going to do the finer bits with some nail scissors, which I find really useful for this kind of thing. So let's do some simple cuts, because the craft knife is very good at going straight, but not so good at going curved, and also not so good at being controlled and ending where you want it to. So let's get my nail scissors, which are just here. Here we are, nail scissors, and I will find that these are much more suited for cutting out round corners. So there's a little tip for you. I have all sorts of stuff attached to magnetic kitchen hangers on that back wall, and that's where all these things are stored. So they're always to hand, but they're never in the way. So anyway, yes, I have lots and lots of different knives and scissors and all sorts of files. A square would be much easier, wouldn't it? Never mind. And now I can get in, hopefully, with my scissors without bending them too much, bending the C too much. Now we are on to step 9, and I'm going to do this, and I'm also going to start on step 10. So step 9 is the base. Using the building as a template, draw a rough area around onto a piece of card to create the base. Make the base slightly larger than the building itself so it will be stable. Cut out the base with scissors and glue the building on with PVA glue. So I'm going to mark out my shape and cut that out, but I'm not going to glue it on just yet because then I'll have to wait for it to dry. What I'm going to do is I'm then going to do the thatching the roof step, but first of all let's just work this out. So I've got this big section of cardboard which I'm going to use. I'm getting more and more into using cardboard for my hobbying the more I do these videos. I'm actually going to do this quite a good size base because I have an idea for some animals and what have you when I'm doing it. So I'm actually going to bring it all the way out around here to there, have a straight front, and then kind of kidney bean it a bit here, because what I might do is expand on this a little bit because I do like to have really awesome looking terrain. So let's move that out of the way and get my scissors, big scissors in this case, and just cut the rough shape out. Now if you remember, this is what I always do because otherwise you risk bending your base before you've even started, and you really don't want to be doing that. There we are. So let's get rid of that on the floor and trim off the edges. Okay, so now I've got the base. I'm going to actually get stuck into doing the thatching because then I can glue the building to the base and leave that and the thatching to dry at the same time rather than having 2 drying periods. I'm not in a huge rush, I've still got plenty of time. There's no point in wasting time. More of my issue at the moment is actually having hobby time rather than how many days are left on this build. And what I'm actually going to do briefly is draw around it as well. So there we are. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start on the roof, thatching the roof. So I will get myself set up and I'll be back in a second with another clip. Thatching the roof. For this step you will need some ready mixed filler, like this. The filler needs to be smooth, like the consistency of whipped cream. If yours is a little too thick, put some filler onto a piece of card and mix in water until it looks about right. Once you have your filler ready, paint it onto the roof. Before it dries, scrape vertical lines into the filler with a cocktail stick or something similar. Now this is a technique which I used for my round houses that I did from Sarissa, and it works really, really well. I'll do a little bit of it on camera and then I will show you the finished result. I'll show you all the steps, but I'm not going to do the entire thing on camera because it's very, very samey. However, you get your filler, you hope that it's not all dried out. This is a pot that is coming to the end of its life. Fortunately, I was aware of this and bought more. So you scrape some out of the filler and you paint it on. This is another reason why I'm doing this before I've stuck it to the base, is because this is far easier for me to move around than when it's stuck to a big cardboard base. So I probably would recommend that you, if you're doing this, also follow this route through. But it is very, very easy. Keep a pot of water handy so that you can keep your spatula moist, as they say. That's what she said. And we can fill in the gaps behind anywhere where you've missed. So it's a nice forgiving technique as well. It gives you a chance to fix problems and mistakes. But don't do it in too large quantities because this stuff does actually dry and become crumbly quite quickly, which is normally a good thing. But in this case, you just don't want it to be too dry when you're scraping down with your cocktail stick. So I'll do a section. Right, there we are. So we've done about half of one half of the roof in that time. Doesn't take long. And what we're now going to do is grab a cocktail stick, which I handily have right here. There's one I prepared earlier. And literally all you're doing is scraping down. And it seems so counterintuitive when you start doing this, but just start at one end and scrape along. And as you go, this starts to look like a thatched roof. And this is why you don't do too much at once, because if you do too much at once, then you're going to end up not having time to do all the scraping before it goes off. It's not so much the spreading that takes the time, it's the scraping. So I'm going to carry on with this now, and I'll be back when I've done the whole lot and before I'm about to paint. So I'll be done when it's stuck on and it's ready for painting. Right, that's done. That is such a time-consuming process. That's probably taken me a good hour just to do the roof on that building, which is a lot longer than I was wanting to spend, but it's done now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that to dry, and I'm also going to glue it down onto the base, which I've not done yet, but I just wanted to show you that so that it's finished, and I'll be back later for the painting. So cleverly enough, I didn't actually plug my microphone in for this bit, so you've got voiceover beard. So what I've done here is I've weighted down the building, as you can see, with some weights to make sure that it can't move. And what I'm about to do is I'm going to use some Das clay to build the ridgeline. Now this is a technique which I haven't seen anyone else do, but I think that Das clay is going to work a lot better for this than the filler. What I'll be doing is I'll be making a sausage out of the Das clay, gluing it down, and then getting my cocktail stick and scratching down the lines. So that's one clip done. I will now, I think I'm going to go away and start cutting and whatever. So let's see what the next clip is. This is fun. I'm not very good at these. So as you can see there, we have a sausage. Whee! And I'm about to PVA along the roof line, along the ridge line, and that is because, as I'm sure you know, clay is not actually sticky as such. It doesn't adhere to anything but itself. So if you are going to do something like this, you're going to need to put some sort of glue, whatever that is, over between the clay and whatever the item you're looking at sticking the clay to, otherwise it will eventually just kind of crumble and fall off. So I put a nice thick bead of PVA along there, spread it out my finger, which I should never do because then my finger gets covered in PVA and I stick to things, but hey. And then the next thing I will do is I will get, there we are, I'll wipe it off. I will get the sausage and I will pinch it and press it and squish it and smudge it and all those lovely words so that it can actually be fixed in. I have these tools that I bought when I first decided to get a little bit into the air dry clay, and one of them is really useful for this. It's got quite a spatulate thing, but it's quite sharp, and so what I'm able to do, I don't know if you can see, I think you probably can see quite nicely there, is I'm digging in so that it looks like that's where this ridgeline sausage of hay is actually tied in and pressed in. So if you look at pictures, you'll see that there's normally that's how it's actually fixed in place. It's however they're doing that, whether it's with rope or whatever. But there's actually a crimp that goes in and fixes it. So what I'm doing is I'm putting that kind of a shape into this, and now I'm doing it so you can't see anything because my camera work is terrible. But I'm doing that actually from the back, and what I find is, as I'm doing this, is it's actually give me a better result, funnily enough, working this way round. So there's another little tip for you. It looked a bit more natural the way that I was pushing it for whatever reason, and the result was better. So I think in a second, yeah, I actually turn it around, if you can see what I mean. I turn it around and use the other side of the spatula tool, and it gives me a much better, much nicer kind of result. So with that now all crimped in, I think I possibly zoom the camera in a second, so I will just pause my chat. There's the tool that I'm going to use for actually scraping it. Yep, there we are. I zoom the camera in, and what I then do is basically the same process as that I did with the toothpick on the filler underneath. I'm going in and I'm basically scratching and scraping down to simulate there being hay, and this is a process which, the same as with the filler, takes some time, but it's worth doing right, and it's worth spending some time, and it's worth not rushing it, because yeah, the end result of this was actually really good. But I figured you were going to get bored, so now we're going to jump to another clip. Isn't this exciting? Here we are. Right, so I still haven't resolved my microphone mistake. This is back to the Games Workshop building, and what I'm looking at doing here is getting the floor for the inside of the building. This one I'm going to have the roof removable, so you are going to be able to game in and out of it, and so just having it bare and plain is not really my ideal. I am going to be leaving these three sections separate, so the walls will be stuck to the baseboard, and the roof and the porch will both be removable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw around the inside of this building, and then I'm going to use filler and do the scratching technique to make it look like hay floor, and then I'll paint it and stain it, which I did with yellow paint, kind of a mustardy paint, and then I think I might have used Agrak's Earth Shade to colour it. So if you see it later on, that's what I did. So what I've got there is I've got the shape of the inside of the floor, so I'll be able to put masking tape down the sides, as you can see, then spread my filler over it, then scratch it with the toothpick, and then peel the masking tape off while it's still wet. Don't leave it to dry, because it will just flake and be destroyed, and then it will look awesome. So there we are. That is my voiceover. I will now return you to real-time beard. So this is now dried okay, and I'm going to paint some PVA over it and let that to dry just so it isn't quite so crumbly, but that's good. So the next step, I will do that off camera because that's just painting PVA. The next step that I've got is I've got the actual plastic kit here, which has been primed and is looking okay, and I'm now going to apply some paint to it to get that finished off. Now I'm not going to do all of that on camera, but I'll invite you back as and when I come across something that's interesting. My idea is to get some very, very watered down Vallejo old wood, and put that over the wood as a wood effect, and then potentially wash that with some other of my washes and leave it at that. I'm not going to go very complicated. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to try to do some nice bright colours from the windows, because when I made this I picked all of the nice windows. Let me move this light a little bit so that you can see a bit better what's going on. Yeah, it fell over. There we are. So yeah, so I've picked all of the nice windows, so I want to light them up nicely. I've got lots and lots of windows to do, and I'm going to pick out the details like the little motif here and the motif above that door. They're the same. I've done them the same because I want them to be the same, and also the around the outside of all of the door windows I'm going to pick out with a different colour, probably something quite strong, maybe a blue or a green. So that's the idea. I'm just going to get this done. As I said, I'll bring you back in for progress reports, but for now I'm just going to get stuck in and see how far I can get on this. Quick update on the Games Workshop Rohan House. I've put some colours on, as you can see. I'm quite pleased with how they're coming out at the moment. Just a little bit of a wash, basically, to do everything. I'm leaving it quite bleached. The colours I've used is, I did the old wood, as I said, very, very watered down, and I then covered that with some earth shade, and that's basically the same as what I've done all over it at the moment without any real variation. I'll be coming on with some dry brushing over the wood to make it much lighter, and also pick out, maybe make the horses' heads a little bit of a different colour, but that's ongoing and going well. What I'm about to do now, sorry about that, we have a car driving along the front. and I have my windows open because it's beautiful weather. So I've got this mustardy paint. I'm going to put that on top of this, on top of the inside of the house, and get that painted and finished, and then I can glue that down, which is my target. So and then I can really start building up the bases. So I'm just going to paint a mustardy over, and then I'll wash down from that. So that's what I'm going to do now. So there we are. I'll let that dry, and then I'll apply some washes to tone it down a little bit. Next up for the official version is step 10, and the last step. We have reached the end, but this will take a little while because there's a couple of processes to do. So let me read the book. Painting the building, step 11, sorry. It is a good idea to undercoat scenery pieces before you start painting, just as you do with your miniature warriors. For models this big, you may find it more convenient to use a spray undercoat. Now, I'm not going to do that because I'm quite happy with how it is, and I've got a big brush. That's the other option. But yeah, you might want to go and spray paint it, obviously. So what I'm going to do is I have my Winsor & Newton raw umber, which is what I'm going to paint over the roof, which is looking fabulous, I think you'll agree, and over the wooden details, so the edges and the hatches and the doors. I'm also going to be putting the hinges on, actually, so I'll do that as well, and you'll see that. So that, but I'm going to do that after I've painted because I want this to be underneath. Then I'm going to be painting the brickwork and the steps with my dark grey paint, which is what I've used before. And what I'll then do is I'll get some white paint, because I quite like how that looks on their model, and I'll paint over the rest of it with white. So I will put some music on, and hopefully this will be interesting for you to watch. Enjoy the music and enjoy watching me paint this mini. Mini? It's not a mini, it's a maxi. Paint this big house. There you are. So I've done the brown and I've done the grey. I'm going to have to leave that now because time has got away from me. It took me about 20 minutes in total to paint all of that. But that will now dry and I'll be able to come back, and what I'll do is I'll paint the white on and I'll paint over the top with a dry brush. I've got a nice colour that I think I'm going to paint over the top for that. I've painted the actual ends, which they didn't show doing on the actual they don't show doing that on the instructions. However, I always like to have an underneath of wood. If something's wood and then painted, I'd always rather have a little bit of brown on underneath it, or whatever colour I'm doing the wood underneath it, and then overpaint with the final colour, which is why I've done that. So that's another little tip. So I'll leave that to dry now. Go and get on with what other things I need to do, and I'll be back later with the next step. I wanted to commemorate this moment as I have just this minute applied the final shuttering. I've got that word on the brain. The final planking here, which is now all around the outside of this building, and I'm very, very close to being able to carry on with the next steps, which will be staining it and also putting some ends onto the roofs. So I'm very, very pleased and very relieved. It's taken me a long time to do that, as I've been doing it in little bits and bits every day, but we're getting there. Next up on the official house, I'm going to be dry brushing across the roof to bring out some of the details. And I've just got this lighter brown, it's actually just called brown, and I'm just going to dry brush very, very simply, as you can see, like so. Now I might do a different colour again on top of this, but I don't want to go too crazy because I quite like the effect that it's actually got. Now this brush is shedding a bit, which is a bit of a problem. It's a very old brush, this. There we are. And if we just turn around now, this side, you can see that's a lot more varied in its colour already, which I actually prefer. So this is probably the side to photograph more. But we'll just do a little bit of a dry brush over the top, just to add a bit of variation to that colouring. It's quite a nice, rich, reddy brown I've got there. I'll be bringing in some lighter and lighter colours on that. I'll let that go off a bit, and I'll probably mix some grey in and do some grey on top of it as well. So yes, I'll be back when I've finished dry brushing and show you what that looks like. The last step on this, before I'm going to be doing my basing and finishing up, is painting on the big C's. And what I've decided to do is go for a very striking green, but not do it completely solidly so that you can see the brown through it. So that's what I'm going to do. You can't really see that because there's not very much light. Let me drag the light around a bit better. There we are, that's made it a bit clearer. So yes, I'm going to paint the green on, and that will be the last thing to do before I start work on the base, which I'm going to start next. I've got some nice simple ideas for the base to show you. Mostly techniques that I've done elsewhere on different videos, but I'll still show you them on this one. So I've painted that. Let's turn it around and do the other one. Okay, there we are. I will bring you back for the next step very shortly. So as promised, here we are back again very quickly, and this is all about now doing around the edges, doing the base. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little ploughed area here. So what I've got is this corrugated packing card. You can make this if you don't have the actual corrugated stuff by peeling corrugated card and peeling one end off the top. So just leaving so if you've got card like this, just take one layer off and that will leave behind corrugated card. However, it is better if you can find the special stuff. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a section of corrugated card here. It's not going to be a very even section, it's not going to be very well maintained, but it is going to be there. So what I'll do is I'll cut roughly the length I want, and then I will make it into an odd shape. Now I will be blending this in, so I don't need to worry too much about that. If I do, I will be putting other trade materials over the top, so I can kind of be a bit loose and liberal there. Okay, so that's going to be fine. And the way that you glue this down is you use PVA glue and you weight it down because it does bend. So we'll spread some PVA glue on the bottom, like so. using my fingers, which I shouldn't do because then my hands get gluey, but never mind. Okay, and then stick that down like so. And what I'll do is I will now go and move this over somewhere else out of my workbench and literally stick a weight on top of it. I am going to do the same thing for my Games Workshop Rohan House. You can see this is coming on nicely. The inside of the house is looking good. This is going to be a little bit of a smaller area, so I'll be able to use the remainder of this. And this is actually going to be inside the little kind of fenced area. So it's going to be a little bit neater, but it's going to be much smaller. So something like so. So again, bit of PVA on the bottom. And I'll do the same thing. I will move this over out of my workbench so I can get on with my next thing that I'm working on. Stick a weight on it and come back to that tomorrow to do the next step. So there we are. Finally, having completed the sticking on of all this wood, you can see I'm now going to stain it, and I use wood stain to stain my wood because, well, you know, why wouldn't you? Hey, great pun. But yeah, it's a really good idea to go to the real world when you're modelling. It's not a good idea to do it too much. You need to do it carefully because you are working in miniature, so a lot of the time things like real wood, so branches or whatever, don't really work as trees, not in my eyes. You can always see when someone's used a branch. But for me, using a wood stain, this is actually a pine, bor in Bulgarian, works really well. So I've got a couple of wood stains that I've bought, and also they last forever, so it's really cheap. This is designed to be put on the outside of your house to keep the wood from getting too badly damaged by the elements. And I have the smallest pot you can buy, and I reckon I'll never run out of this, ever. So there we are. So I'm going to be treating the entirety of this probably with 2 coats of this bor. I may end up changing to walnut, I'm not sure. It's a slightly stronger colour. This is a bit yellowy, but for now I'm going to do at least 1 coat over the entire model using the bor, the pine. Sorry, I always think in Bulgarian nowadays. It's a bit odd. Some words I always forget of the English. What I'll also be doing is painting on some of the filler over the wood over the bottom there, which is the stonework. I won't bother showing you that because you've seen me do that on the other buildings in this project. So and that will also be being painted in the same way with the grey and what have you. But I thought I'd just quickly show this bit. I'm very, very, very pleased to have got to it. That sticking all of these on was a long, painful and boring process. But I never like to make things easy for myself. So there we are. I'm going to do the whole of this, and I will show you this when it's probably nearly finished, actually, to be honest, because there's not much left to do on it. I have some teddy bear fur that I've never done before, so I'm aiming to use that for the roof to do the thatching, so that's going to be fun. So I'll bring you along probably for that stage on this build. But anyway, there's a chance this will even be included in the main video. It's going quite well again now. We shall see. Onwards. I've stuck down a little bit of fencing that came with the kit around this area of the garden, but that's about all I've done. I've also glued that house down. So what I'm now going to do is something which regular viewers of my videos will have seen me do a number of times, and I'll just do a very quick section and then do most of it off camera. And this is how I put down my basic terrain, and I'll do this over the top of the little kind of like garden area that I've started to glue in here, and then I'll finish off the rest off camera because it will take some time and it will be a bit boring because it's very repetitive. So what I've got, there is a link to this in the description below, how I make this. This is what I call my terrain paint, and it's basically PVA mixed in with some paint of whatever colour you wish, and water, and a little bit of dishwasher or dish soap or washing up liquid of it, whatever you want to call it. The stuff you use when you're washing up by hand, not dishwasher machine stuff, obviously. So fairy liquid. and that fairy liquid prevents it from going off, so prevents mould, but also acts as a bit of a flow improver. So just a little dash, you don't need much of that. So I make this as liquid or as I wish, quite liquid actually, because the sand that I'm about to scatter over does actually soak up quite a lot. And so yeah, so you just paint this one in a section, however much you wish. Not too much, because you don't want it to dry while you're painting, which is already starting to. So that'll probably be a big enough section. I'll just do it over the top of all the garden. And then what you do is you get your sand, which I have here, pre-sifted, and you scatter it on. And it's as simple as that. And when that dries, which it dries in literally seconds, you can then lift up the minute model, tip it back into your big bucket, and move on. And it's as simple as that. And that gives it a good texture and a good colour to then flock over the top. So I will now empty that back. You can see just how quick that was. There we are, and that has been done. And it has retained the kind of corrugations for where I want to put my little garden, my crops. So you can do that over the top of texture, and it doesn't hide it. Now I will zoom in slightly better, because what's actually happened is quite interesting. What's actually happened is in one place, just here, it hasn't actually adhered any sand. That's not a problem, because what you do is you just get a little bit more paint, drop it on, and then get a little more sand and drop that on. So you can fix this up, and if you have any problems like that, you can fix this up very easily. And what that causes that is if the paint has dried before you put your sand on. So there we are. I'm going to do the whole of these two buildings now, the bases, and I'll be back when I come to flocking. The sand and paint mix is dry. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to do this a little differently. Often I will put another coat of the brown paint over the top of my sand. However, I'm not going to do that on this one, because I want to have that kind of mottled appearance that I've got. I quite like how that's looking. So we're going to go straight into the flocking, and I'm going to do some of this on camera and most of it not, because again, if you want to see this, well, it's the same thing repeated. So I'll just quickly show you how I go about doing this, and I'm going to be very careful. I might bring you back for when I do the actual fields, the little fields thing, because that's going to be a bit different. But for most of it, what you're doing is you're taking my terrain glue, which I will drop the link to how you do that in the description below, and you paint that on. I can see that this cardboard is starting to warp, which is a bit of a shame. But that's fine, it's not the end of the world. It gives it a little bit of a natural curve when it sits down on the table. So we put some terrain glue over the top, which is PVA, water, and a dash of that washing up liquid, dish washing soap, whatever you want to call it. Fairy liquid. And I put this everywhere. I don't just put this where I'm going to put my flock, because this also acts as a sealant on the sand underneath. So that'll be a good section to do for now. We don't do too much. There we are. And what I've got here is I've got 3 different colours of flocks. And again, if you look in the description below, you will be able to see some videos, some links to some very short videos as to how I make this. And what I do is I scatter my darkest flock over first, which I'm starting to run out of, and I'm going to need to make some more. So I put that over first as the base colour. And I don't cover everything. As I said, I want this to be a bit patchy. There we are. I then take a mid colour and I crumble and scatter that on, but even more patchy really, normally for this. The point being that grass in nature is not all one colour and not all one thickness. So being too neat actually is a bad thing. So there we are. And then I've got this very light one, which is actually, the colour is actually called grass, funnily enough. And I do this to bring out some highlights where I want to put some brighter stuff. Maybe I'll put it more towards the bottom of the house, in which case you can lift and to get in under the eaves. So So I put that all over it, but again, not everywhere, just patchy. And finally, I come back in with the dark just to tie it all together. And again, not everywhere, but I find that really helps, that last little touch. There we are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flock this base and that base, and then I'll have a look at how I'm going to do the fields, and I'll bring you along for that. This is now coming on quite nicely, as you can see. I still have to paint the front door, put the light inside the windows and paint the window frames and stain and what have you, just do some washes on the stone, but it's getting very close. So I also will need to do the wood on the ends, which is dried on. However, the next step for me to do now, I think, I've got a little bit of time, not very much, is to try a technique which a lot of people talk about that I've wanted to try for a while. Now, I ordered this teddy bear fur in to use to make the to do the roof, so to stick down as the roofing material, whatever it's called. It's gone from me, sorry, I'm tired. So I'm going to do that now, and I will talk you through the process, and then probably do most of the cutting and gluing off camera. So I'm just going to cut out the shape that I need, and then use PVA to glue it down, and then clamp at the edges, and then that will be left to dry for the rest of the day. And then this evening, I think that I'll be then painting over the top of that with more PVA, though we'll see. And then I'll be putting some spray paints on and some other paints to try to do the coloration. Thatch, that's the word I was looking for. So I'm going to get that done. I'm just going to cut that out and stick it down, and I'll be inviting you along for the next step on this build. So I'm quite excited about this. It's a technique I've heard a lot of people talk about. This is now stuck down, dried, so it's glued on properly. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to start to actually process the fur so that it can be done like thatch. Now, I'm not going to claim originality on this in any way, shape or form. I am following Mel, our great glorious leader, Mel the terrain tutor, and if you don't follow him, get it sorted out, because he is the original and the best at these style of videos. He's amazing, and yeah, you won't go wrong. So I'm following the technique that he uses, and yeah, just to give a big shout out, I'll probably even link to the video in the description of this one if I remember. So first of all, I have a brush. Now, I don't have a hairbrush, funnily enough. However, I do have this. This is not all that stiff bristled, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to brush this down just so that everything's pointing in the right direction. And you can see that I'd already done this side before I started filming. So if you turn this around, you can see it's quite unruly, and then quite quickly with this relatively soft brush, I'm able to get that all pointing in the right direction. So the next thing that Mel has you do is the watered down PVA, what I call my terrain paint, and there is a link to that in the description below, and a big soft brush. This is quite watery, as you can see, quite liquid, and what we're doing is we're gonna soak that in, and it takes a lot, and we're just gonna like paint that down over the whole thing. So I'll pop some music on and get this done. Okay, there we are. That took about 5 or 6 minutes, so not that long, but that's a lot of paint, of glue being painted on there. So I'm going to let that dry now, and afterwards I'll come back with the next step. So I'll just put that to one side, and I'll be back very shortly. And so we come to the final steps of this build, which is really cool. The other more advanced one is waiting for the teddy bear fur to dry, which is occurring over there, so that won't be finished until tomorrow. What I've got in front of me here is some dressings that I bought when I was doing the Hobbit hole for Rosie. So we have a bunch of stuff that I bought from Serious Play, which is just amazing. So there are some nice flowers, there are some crop strips, I also bought some cabbages, which are great, and a few plant pots, and I painted up some other like mushrooms and what have you. So I'm going to do a couple of things. First of all, I'm going to make use of these on one of the buildings, and then what I'll do is I'll do the other one using non-purchased, so pre-made stuff like this, because you may not have access to anything like this, and it's good to show you how to do that. So on this one I'm going to go ahead and use the more basic technique, because this is a slightly larger garden, and therefore I think it's going to be good to have these kind of things on there to make it look quite advanced. And yeah, I'd really recommend these are brilliant. So get yourself onto eBay, look for Serious Play, and pick yourself up some crop strips. So the way they work is quite simple. You will want to have tweezers. You will want tweezers because they're very, very sticky, and if you don't use tweezers you'll really regret it. So as simple as that. Oh, you can't see, apologies. So as simple as that, you peel them off like so, and you stretch them down where you want them. Now they are self-adhesive, like I've said, but it is a good idea potentially to get some PVA in there as well. Now you can see why I was saying use tweezers, because that's stuck to my finger where I've, yeah, they're very, very sticky and a bit fiddly to use, but they are awesome. They look great. So once that's stuck down, and once you can get it to not stick to you, that will go along the garden, and there you have some nice crops. Simple as that. Okay, so now what we'll do is we'll get another one slightly different, and we will peel that off, put this one over here, press down, stretch it out as much as you want because they're stretchy. There we are. Simple as that. When you do it right, it's easy. I did that one wrong, but get my finger underneath it. And let's do one more. Let's do this white one for a little bit of variety of colour. And I'll put this one in the middle. So again, doing this right, we will start by laying it down. Easier said than done. Come on. Laying it down. Getting it stuck to your thumb because you're an idiot. Then getting it tangled because you're even more of an idiot. Tell you what, let's stick this end down. I really have screwed that one up, haven't I? And get that untangled. Don't seem to be able to. Oh well, there we are. That's got a little clump at the end. Never mind. That's how you don't do that one. But that doesn't look too bad, and by the time I'm finished with this I won't even remember having made that mistake, apart from the fact that you lot will be able to remind me. So those are some of the strips, and as you can see they're pretty cool, but they are very, very sticky. You need to be very careful when you're putting them in. So now we'll pull some of these ones out. Now these are actually more traditional clumps, but they are still crops. So I will get some of these and put them in. And this is the benefit of purchasing these sorts of things. It's that simple. You just pick out what you want, done. And let's get some more herby stuff and put it over by the base of the wall. More herby looking things over here. And maybe these. good. Okay, and then let's put that there. Bit of a gap in the middle. Right, so the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put some of these nice purple ones. I think that garden's looking good. I'm going to put some of these nice purple ones around the around the actual garden. They're a bit heathery. But they are very pretty. So we'll put them next to the path. There we are. Aren't they pretty? And along the base there. And they stretch as well. So there we are. That, I believe, is that building pretty much done and dusted. I'm very pleased with it. What I'll do now is get these tidied away, and I will show you how to do this if you don't have any of these cool little serious play and other specially made items to do your garden. Okay, so what you see here is I have some pots. Now some of them are shop bought, so these are from Luke's APS, static grass, but everything else you see is homemade. This is clump foliage I've made by blending up some old washing up sponges and then dyeing with paint, and these are coloured flocks that I've made in the same way as I made the green flocks that are already on the base. So the thing to say here is while I do have some static grasses, there's a lot of stuff here which you can just make yourself. So let's start to get this applied. So first of all, we'll get a little bit of PVA on my plate. And I've got a cocktail stick for this, for applying this. And first of all, I'm going to be using the spring, which is a lighter spring static grass. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply, and you notice you don't need to have the static grass applicator for this. So I'm going to apply a bead of PVA along the top of one of the ridges in my garden. Now, I'm using PVA because I'm trying to keep this as low tech as possible. It might be better if you can have the super tacky stuff either from Luke or from World War Scenics or whatever, War World Scenics, whatever it is. But you could do this with PVA. And what you're then going to do is you're then going to get your tweezers, and you're going to be able to put your static grass onto that bead of what's it, and it will look like crops growing along the top. Do it very, very carefully, unlike that, where you put too much down. It takes very, very little static grass to get a good effect. There we are. I will zoom in a bit at the end and you can see the results. So that has put, actually I'll zoom in now. There we are, that has put some static grass along the first ridge. And what I'll do is, just to complete this, I'll do that again, and I'll do it with the camera zoomed in a bit more, and I'll do it on this ridge here. So a little bit of glue on a toothpick, drag it along. And there you are, you have a little patchy garden going on. What we'll now do is click, 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 do some different colours. So let's do some pinks or reds or whatever. And it's the same technique, but obviously not with static grass, and this is homemade. So what we'll do is we will draw that bead along. Sorry, my hands are in the way because I'm right-handed, so you'll just have to bear with that. You can see there's the glue going down. Okay, and then we'll just get this, and I'll just do this with the pinch technique because that's it's easiest to control this stuff than the tweezers. And you just scatter that way you put your PVA, and that then will be like some sort of coloured crop that's coming up, and it is as simple as that. Now, for my clump foliage, I want to have some bushes on the front, and this probably will take longer than I will be using for to produce the video, because this stuff does take some hardening. But basically what I do is I get a load of PVA, put it down where I want to put the clump foliage, in there we are, lump of PVA, get myself my clump foliage that I've made and stick it in place. And it's as simple as that. There we are. There's a nice bit of a bush growing there. And I'm going to have one more over here on the corner. Actually, what I was going to do, I was going to put one here, because if you notice, because of how the kit is, it's not endlessly tiling, and so that's really annoying. So what I'll be doing is I'll be putting a dollop of PVA in at the base there and onto the fence, and then finding a nice chunky bit to sit in there, and that, when it dries, will nicely secure the fence so that it's not, loads of PVA sorted, so that it can't be broken. So it's not going to get broken because it's going to be stuck to that clump foliage. So there we are. We've got a couple of pieces of my homemade clump foliage in there, and I'm going to get some of the darker, and I'm going to put one at the very end as well. So, same trick, lump of PVA, pick out a bit of foliage that you like the look of. This is a lot finer, there's one, and stick it in place. Okay, that's me done, I think. I will now wrap this up for tonight, and hopefully we'll add in the finishing touches on the other third house. But if I don't, then you know that it didn't get done in time, and it'll be in a future video, but I think I should get that in there. So this is now dry, as you can hear, mostly. Yep, that's okay. And looking pretty good actually. I'm pretty pleased with how that looks. I'm now going to do the final painting on this model, and then this will be done. So the things that need to be done are, I need to paint inside the windows and the window frames, and I need to stain this end board. I need to do that all the way around, and then I need to pick out the colours on the stones as well, and then finally I'm going to need to paint the actual roof. So I'll be doing the inside of the windows with a yellow, so let's grab a yellow. And that will make it a nice kind of glow that is coming from a fire inside or whatever, so it makes it look lived in, which is the effect that I'm going for on these builds. So I will grab myself a bit of a paintbrush and I will get started, and you can watch along if you wish. And so we're done, and I can't quite believe it. I've managed to get all three. How cool is that? So what you can see, looking from left to right, the one on the left is the one that I've basically followed the instructions that are in the magazine, and it looks absolutely brilliant. I'm so pleased. It looks like a stronghold building, so maybe a prison or a guardhouse, or maybe the armory or whatever. It's a clearly brick built or stone built, and looks very solid indeed. Though it's got very nice, some very nice flowers growing around the path next to it. In the middle you can see the one where I started off doing things as they've described in the magazine, and then went a little bit different. I've done the teddy bear fur on the thatching, which looks absolutely superb. I'm very pleased with it, and also clad that entirely with coffee stirrers, which also looks superb, and I will get some better photographs which I'll show shortly at the end of this video. And then on the right hand side what you can see is the actual official Rohan House from Games Workshop, which also is absolutely beautiful. It's a lot smaller, you can see that. It's a much tinier house, but I've made it so that each of the sections comes apart. So if I just quickly show you, the porch comes off and the roof comes off, so it's playable inside, unlike the other two buildings which are not playable inside. They're just terrain pieces. It's been a fun build, and I'm very pleased with these three buildings, and I hope that some of the techniques that I've used will prove useful. So what I'll do now is I'll wrap this up, and then we will jump to some photographs, and you can enjoy seeing some detailed pictures of these houses. There we are then, another magazine done, and what an epic build that's turned out to be. It seemed like such a small one, built from Rohan Houses, yeah, easy. But of course, I made it much more complicated for myself, and certainly with the extra one with the cladding of the wood that I didn't think I was going to get done in time, that was quite a challenge. I've enjoyed it. It's been an opportunity for me to try out the teddy bear fur. That was the biggest thing and the biggest reason why I did that one, and it works really well. And I will try to remember to link to the terrain tutor video which I used for the actual technique for getting the teddy bear fur to look nice, and I'm quite pleased with how it looks. It's not quite as good as how Mel gets it, but then I don't have any knit, that's the word, any knit combs which he uses, so I might have to pick one up. Anyway, I'll thank you for watching, and say if you're not yet subscribed, please do so. I do one of these videos on Battle Games of Middle-earth every fortnight, and then there are 2 other videos every week that I do as well. So there's quite a lot of content going out, and hopefully this will keep you entertained and amused during the lockdown and afterwards. And yeah, don't forget to ding the bell if you are interested in hearing whenever one of my videos goes live, because yeah, that's how YouTube actually does inform you. And last but by no means least, thank you so much for watching Beard Clipper, and I hope that you all stay healthy, safe and well during this crazy time.